Hey guys, thank you very much for tuning into another episode of My Life Speaks, the place for random talks on random thoughts. Today's topic of discussion is the world an illusion? Now, this is quite a big topic, so once you've had a listen to the whole video, please leave a like and then comment in the section below as to what your thoughts are, because that would be awesome. I'd love to know what other people think on this subject as well. Now, we'll explore the subject as to whether the world is real or whether it's an illusion through a sort of very simple, logical, and intuitive process, which I hope that most people should be able to understand and follow, so I can get all my thoughts across as well in this video. So first, we have to define what reality is and what illusion is, so that we can then map our perceived existence onto these definitions to then reach a conclusion based quite simply on which definition fits best our perception of reality. So let's start first by trying to define what reality is. And so here, I would like you to take a few seconds to think about what comes to your mind when you try and define reality, that which you definitely know to be real. And here you want to try and come up with some specific examples which match this definition as well. So just going to give you a couple of seconds to do that. Just a couple more. And hopefully by now you should have some semblance of an idea. So thanks very much for doing that. Now, what you want to do is keep that definition in mind, or keep the list of examples that you might have come up with in mind as well. You may even want to write it down so you can sort of refer to it later when we go through the discussion further. Now that you've done that for reality, we should do the same for the definition of non-reality as well, or an illusion. So here again, you might want to create another definition, or just come up with one which is the exact opposite of the definition of reality which you've just sort of come up with. Again, you want to try and have a couple of examples to hand as well which fit this definition. Okay, and just going to give you a couple of moments to do that as well. Just a little bit more. Okay, so lovely. So we should now have a definition of what is reality and what isn't reality, or what is an illusion. And I've done the same, by the way, in my mind as well, whilst I was giving you time to think about that. And I can imagine that some may have said to themselves, something like Mount Everest is real. Okay, something large, solid, impressive, undisputed. Maybe you might have thought about something related to your family. Maybe your family is real. Maybe the feelings you have for your loved ones are real. Perhaps you thought about the laws of physics, like the laws of thermodynamics are definitely real, and so on. Now, they're all sort of reasonable examples there, so that's fair enough. But when I think about and contemplate on these sorts of examples, and what to me appears to be something that's common in between these sorts of things that come up to our minds first, once we think about think beyond the initial impressions anyway, is that our mind gives perceived duration and persistence of objects, of the senses. They're kind of used in the definition of reality, the perceived duration and the persistence of the objects of the senses. That's probably what we think about as reality. A metaphorical way to explore this might be that if your love for someone, let's say, lasts only 3 weeks, you may label it as an infatuation, maybe a fling or something like that. And maybe a 2-year relationship is something more quote-unquote real. Okay, it feels more real as a relationship. However, from the perspective of 50-year marriage, a 2-year relationship might feel like a fling, if that makes sense. Okay, so not always, but usually you will find that deep down at its core, we tend to subconsciously define that as real, which you feel is enduring and persistent, whether it's a physical object or an intellectual one. Okay, take another example for this instance is if you feel sad for, let's say, 2 minutes. Okay, it's a fleeting, insignificant emotion to you. But if you feel sadness for 2 years, we call it something real. We kind of label it. We call it depression. Okay. On the other hand, you may not have thought about things that last for a blink of an eye as examples which are significant enough representation of reality, even though they might be. Okay, just because they don't last long enough, for example. So duration seems to be one of these qualities you might have thought about. Another commonality about the things which you feel meet the definition of reality is that you can usually sense these things with your physical senses. So those of the sight of touch, sight, smell, hearing, tasting. Maybe we can also include thinking in this, like it's the sense of thinking, if we can call it a sense. I mean, the sense of thinking, maybe uh, is used in the case of the notion of the laws of physics, for example, that you have in your mind, or the feelings that you have for a loved one. They're not something you can touch, taste, smell, etc., but they seem to exist in your mind. And of course, things such as feelings, which are just physical too, maybe, as a result of the structure and the connections in your brain and the brain chemistry and neurotransmitters and what have you. So that there's a physical element to those feelings as well. Okay, but now let's talk about things that are not real. Okay, so here you may have thought about things that you can't sense with your physical senses and may only exist in your mind. So I personally thought of a unicorn, for example. Okay, maybe the delusion of a person who isn't of sound mind, maybe a misconception, something that just isn't true. Things that have no basis in reality, quote unquote reality. Okay, so like when someone says the sun doesn't exist, and you might say, well, it clearly does, so that statement cannot be real. So when we think about it, what we call reality is usually things that we can sense with our physical senses. There are things that are purely intellectual or related to brain chemistry, which are not as easy to prove. I mean, for example, it's easier to prove the existence of a rock than it is to provide the existence of love as you perceive it, for example. When we talk about something that isn't real, on the other hand, we're talking about something that doesn't have a basis in our perception of reality, in terms of how we believe the world works or how it should work. Now, mind you, this is regardless of whether or not our beliefs are correct or not, but it's just about whether it fits your beliefs of how the world works. And here I'm reminded of the example where even Einstein didn't believe in the existence of black holes, even though his very own theory very, very strongly suggested its existence. So that's one example of he himself not believing in, or rather not feeling something is real, which are real, but just purely because it doesn't agree with his perception of reality, even though his own equations kind of suggested for that to be a reality. Now let's talk about something that we can all agree is definitely not reality. So here we have an example of dreams. Okay, so dreams when you sleep, or even daydreams. I mean, all sorts of things can happen in there, but we don't say that they're real, even though your senses experience it, and may even have a memory of it later on when you think about it. Once you've woken up from this dream, the first thing your mind does is to reassure itself that it was just a dream. Okay, and it tries to say, okay, this wasn't reality. And if you think about it, I mean, what do you use to come to that conclusion? You use your brain, your mind. There is no other tool you have. That's what you use to perceive and judge the difference between what you've just experienced was a dream or whether it was a reality. So let's remind ourselves of the sensations. Um, Speaking of which, let's remind ourselves that the sensations from from your body and your sort of bodily organs, if you like, go into your mind, and then your mind interprets those sensations, and then you perceive something, and then you conclude whether or not it is reality or not based on your understanding and assumptions of what is real. So here I remember of there being cases in people where they do not have as good of an ability as the normal person to tell whether something was a dream or whether it was actually a memory of something that really happened. So they wake up from the dream, and maybe today, later on, or maybe tomorrow, they no longer know whether that thing was a dream or whether it actually happened. Okay, I actually know of someone who had that sort of an issue previously, and they're very smart, completely living a normal life, even above average life actually, but they did genuinely have this problem. So that's kind of worth bearing in mind as well as to how your brain perceives things. It's just a sort of stimulus from your senses coming in, and then it's sort of interpreting them into understanding and perceiving reality. But coming back to our discussion, it's unusual to think about it, but you've also got to keep in mind that the brain is currently in complete darkness. It's fairly obvious, but it's important we think about this. It's inside your solid skull. And yet when you see the sun, you perceive brightness, even though there is no brightness inside your brain, and very little, if any, even any brightness inside your body. So you are entirely reliant on the interpretation of your mind, of the sort of sensory perception it receives, to conclude whether something is real or whether it is not. And you also have factually no other way whatsoever to conclude whether something is real or not, apart from your brain, apart from your own mind. There is no third person view in this world. It's all in your mind alone. So let's discuss the dream side of things, which is an example of things that are an illusion or just definitely not a reality. Let's talk about them a bit. So you can think about the last dream that you had, which you remember. Maybe you can even think about the last 3 dreams that you remember when you were sleeping, when you were lying in your bed, you were lying sideways. Now, in the dream, you were walking around, you were talking, you were interacting with this completely unreal world, so to speak. There may have been trees, there may have been sort of rooms, buildings, houses, a coffee shop, other people, maybe some people that you know from your perceived reality, and maybe some people you don't know at all. Maybe they're strangers, even though they may seem like your friends in the dream. And other people who may really be strangers, okay? Now, when you were dreaming, your mind completely believed all of this. There was no convincing your mind whilst you were dreaming or inside your dream that the dream wasn't real, okay? And when you think about it, you perceived gravity, which normally, remember, you perceive it based on your internal senses, but you perceived gravity below your feet, okay? I mean, you were lying flat in your bed, and yet you were happy to perceive in that moment that the gravitational pull was below your feet whilst you were walking around, rather than feeling it on your back and you perceiving yourself lying on your back. Okay, isn't that interesting? And also, like, if I was to kind of appear in that dream, if I was to talk to you, ask you some questions, maybe when you were visiting a coffee shop, maybe you were at your mother's house when she grew up, which I know someone once told me they had a dream of being at their mother's house, the same house where she grew up as a child. But if I asked you about these things, you would have been able to give me answers to all my questions. What were you doing the previous day? Who were your parents? Where were you born? How long did you live in this city for? What's the weather like? Which way is up? And so on. You'd be giving me all the answers to these questions in your dream. You would have the whole sense of an identity, a sense of the past, a present, a future, and you would be just as confident in your beliefs in that dream whilst having the conversation with me as you are when you have a conversation with me when you're awake. Because within the context of your dream, of course, you perceive yourself to be awake and not asleep, and you have no idea that you're in fact asleep in your perceived reality anyway. So going further, I mean, when you think about your dream, right, where did the trees exist? Where were the streets, the cups of coffee, right? The air, the space, the expanse. Where did the buildings exist? They were all existing in the space of your mind. An entire existence, which you perceived as reality in that moment, only existed in your mind. Now remember, this whole thing which you perceived as reality whilst you were dreaming, upon waking up, you immediately concluded that it wasn't reality after all, even though at the time of experiencing, you were very confident that it was real. So why is that? Why did you decide that the dream was not a reality after waking up, even though you were just as convinced that it was a reality whilst you were in the dream and you were experiencing it? So that's a kind of a rhetorical question, but you've got to think about that. And as we've already talked about, the reality that you experience after waking up is being evaluated by this very same equipment, your brain, your mind, your senses, and it's experiencing both the dream as well as the perceived reality. It's experiencing both of these things, and that's exactly the thing that you're using to judge whether something is your reality or something is your dream. And remember, it's kind of agreeing with both truths, if you like. When it's a reality, it's confident that it's a reality. When it's dreaming, it also thinks that it's a reality. The only difference is that when you wake up, you then look back on the dream and think that it's not reality, okay? Now, the more I think about dreams, I think about some other random thoughts as well when I think about that, really. And one fact, when I was thinking about this dream and contemplating on that and this kind of theory and this kind of way of working around deciding which one is reality and which one is dreams, is that you and I cannot prove that the world existed before we were born, right? You yourself personally, or you myself personally, we can't prove that the world existed before we gained consciousness, okay? And neither can we prove that it will continue to exist after we are no longer here, okay? And remember, there is only one perspective of reality, as we've already discussed. The same equipment, the same mind, only one perspective. There's no third person perspective of this reality. Everything is processed in your mind. So there is no way for you to independently verify the existence of the world prior to you attaining consciousness and having memories of those events. So just as in a dream, where you seem to have a feeling of certainty around these things for a certain duration of time, or a whole world having a history of many years, even though your dream only commenced maybe 30 seconds ago from the perception of the perceived reality. So although you can objectively prove to yourself through your own perception that the world continues to exist when others perish or when others are born, you cannot prove to yourself objectively, and neither you ever will be able to, as to whether the world existed before you were born and will continue to exist after you perish. You simply assume that that must be the case, based on your observations in your perceived reality. I mean, all the space and time exists in your mind right now in the same way as it did when you were dreaming. And your brain is perfectly happy with this inconsistency and goes along during its day perfectly satisfied in its conclusion. Okay? That which your brain perceives as being enduring, consistent, and constant, it tends to perceive as being more real, so to speak. Okay, is one thing that we can gather. Other reasons which inform your mind as to which one is the dream and which one isn't is inconsistency, especially in the case of a dream. So, for example, the laws of physics might have been different in your dream. Maybe you could fly around. Okay, I've only flown, I think, once or twice in my entire life in my dreams. Only once or twice. I think it's very rare, actually. But maybe you could fly around in your dreams. Or maybe things weren't as consistent and they kept changing, maybe kept flickering, for example. Maybe the clouds were moving too quick. Maybe it was day and night very quickly, for example, okay? Whereas if we compare that to our perceived experience of reality, things tend to remain the same and they're relatively constant in terms of how we perceive it. So your pet dog today, your pet cat today, is the same one from yesterday. And the same pet will be there tomorrow morning when you play with them and show them love and affection, okay? Now, we should bear in mind, of course, that there's no reason why another universe couldn't exist where the laws of physics are different. And if you were to venture into that universe and observe the things happening there, perhaps you would then perceive that universe as not being real, okay? Because the laws of physics are different compared to what you're used to in your own mind and your own assumptions. So thus far, we've established a couple of points, I think, which are worth bearing in mind. One is that there's no third-person view of reality, which kind of comes from the fact that you use the same brain and mind to compare reality as well as illusion, and it's the same brain, same mind, which is experiencing both, which then brings us to kind of a next point, which is that your brain is fooled between reality and illusion. So when it's dreaming, it thinks the dream is real, and when it's in the perceived reality, it thinks the reality is real, and the dream is not real, okay? So that's kind of important to bear in mind. One thing I would mention here as well, that sometimes when you're dreaming, you're not aware of the reality. But then you could also say that in your day-to-day realities, you're not really remembering your dreams much, right? You're just living in the very moment, in the very present. You're not really aware of or thinking about the dream. So that's kind of interesting there. Also, that your mind tends to use the principle of duration, persistency, and consistency to determine what is more likely to be real, okay? So now that we've kind of established a few of these points, we can begin to start comparing our experienced reality to these definitions of what is reality, okay? And so far, like I said, the main thing being duration, consistency, and persistency. So first of all, it's fairly obvious to see that things in this world, in our perceived reality, are constantly changing, right? So they're coming into existence and they disappear into non-existence, and this is happening all the time, okay? And viewed from the perspective of, let's say, 4 billion years, your entire existence is but a blink of an eye, maybe even less, okay? Everything, if you were to, let's say, view the Earth from, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 miles away, okay, and you were seeing very quickly the entire 4 billion span of years in your perception, everything would seem extremely speeded up, right? And the things on the surface would they would kind of appearing and disappearing and all the time and really quickly, and it's kind of similar to how they might be viewed as flickering, similar to how it is in the dream. And since these things would seem to exist only for a moment, your mind would probably not attach any significance to it because they're just momentary existence, right? The dinosaurs would come and go, and it might have been a nanosecond or something. I'm not even sure you might have noticed it, okay? I'm just using that as a metaphor. It might not be a real scale, but you get the idea. So just as people don't tend to get attached to a single flash of lightning or a single wave on the surface of the vast ocean, because it just exists for a moment, but on the other hand, people do get attached to mountains. Okay, you have mountains which get treated as sort of spiritual things, and you, even if you're not a spiritual person, you might still feel that significance in a mountain because it lasts for thousands and thousands of years. And similarly, you might be attached to cities, or maybe you might be attached to your own house. And again, that's because these things tend to persist for a longer duration of time from your perspective and how fast or slow you perceive time in relation to how long the average human lives, for example. But if you think about it, I mean, where were the boundaries of the city 10,000 years ago? The city where you live in. Where were those boundaries? Probably weren't there, right? Where is the house that was built 5,000 years ago in New York City? Not there anymore, okay? I mean, over time, cities change, their names change, entire languages change, even the appearances of people change. It changes over time, okay, constantly. I mean, there were no people living outside of the continent of Africa 150,000 years ago. So there were no humans that looked like you if you live outside Africa. Even within Africa, perhaps people look different 150,000 years ago compared to how we look today, okay? Going back further in time, we do not know what was there before existence itself, before the Big Bang. And yeah, I mean, when you think about it, isn't it funny how there is this very similar kind of aspect to how we don't know what was there before we were born, and we also don't know what was there before the universe or the cosmos was born from our perspective. We also don't know what happens after the cosmos ceases to exist, just as you and I don't know objectively what happens after we cease to exist. Now, if we assume that the world exists, and it exists in the manner in which you intuitively seem to understand, even then, your perception of reality is so lacking that the world may as well be an illusion. Okay, your understanding of the cosmos and how it works is like an ant's understanding of Mars. Let's just take a simple object. Well, it's not simple. Let's take an object we should be familiar with, which is the sun. Okay, and you can only see the sun in its visible light. Okay, for all the other spectrums of the light that it emits, all the information that it's kind of beaming out in these other spectrums, you would need a telescope and you'd need various sort of filters and enhancing on a computer and things like that for you to be able to perceive that. You can't see UV light, you can't see X-ray, you can't see infrared, just to name a few of these spectrums. Now, there are animals out there that can sense infrared light, for example, pit vipers, or they can see UV light, for example, bees, but you can't do that. So put it another way, just your vision, which is one of your senses through which you understand the world, is lacking when we compare it to a parakeet's sense of vision. And a parakeet's sense of vision, in turn, is lacking when you compare it to a mantis shrimp's vision. Okay, so that's just one of your senses, and that affects one of the ways in which you understand the world. Now you have to amplify to all your other senses. And that diminishes your understanding perhaps even more because of the amount of information you're receiving about the universe and about the world is even less as a result of those things, okay? Now, even your own understanding, for example, your understanding of the world, or my understanding of the world even, if we compare that to Einstein's and add it on to all these other sensory deficiencies we seem to have compared to the other animals, for example, it becomes clear fairly quickly that even if there is an objective reality out there for us to perceive and to understand, because our comprehension and perception is so limited, it's so unimaginably small as a fraction of the entirety of reality, that our understanding of the cosmos may as well be, for all intents and purposes, a huge misunderstanding or an illusion. And what's more is that our minds tends to protect itself from this sort of realizations, because otherwise it would be completely overwhelmed. Okay, so if you see like an episode, or a documentary, for example, where people with very advanced equipment and cameras and screens, they visit this remote tribe in a jungle which has barely been contacted by anyone from the outside world, and they show them a playback of the video recording of the children playing, for example, or they themselves kind of I don't know, making some tools or something. They are very happy and amused by it. They find it very funny, and if you think about it, it would be funny to them, isn't it? It would be amusing, and that's because it's like a magic trick, okay, a magic trick. But it's kind of like a coping mechanism. In reality, it should completely blow their minds. You know, they should be completely overwhelmed by this technology that's in front of them, which is so far advanced that it's even more than magic. It's like a miracle compared to their understanding of technology. But the mind's job is to keep functioning and to keep sort of coping. Keep chugging along in this world. And when it doesn't understand something, what the mind tends to do is just put through it some assumptions, stick some vaguely plausible sort of labels on it to explain it to itself so it can make itself feel better, and just that it understands it to some extent, so it can just kind of move on with the rest of its life rather than being completely overwhelmed by this new information that it's just found. So in a similar way, all our minds are doing the same thing if you think about it. When it comes to objectively understanding reality, we have virtually no understanding, a true understanding, holistic understanding of this existence, but our minds protect us from realizing this so that we can continue to function and live our day-to-day lives without sort of having an existential crisis or something. Now, coming back to the main purpose of the video today, when we look back on the things we've talked about thus far, okay, what we usually believe is reality is something that is constant in duration and doesn't change, so it has a sense of permanence. Yet, we have also just established that when we look at the real reality, nothing is permanent. Things change all the time. Things come into existence and disappear from existence all the time. Even if it does appear to persist for a longer period of time, all that you have to do is give it some more time. Maybe you give it 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years. Give it enough time, it's going to cease to exist. And if you think about it, isn't this quite similar to a dream where things exist and then they don't exist anymore? It's just a matter of how long you have to wait, but things stop existing. Things change all the time. Things flicker if you fast forward through time itself. So reality, when you think about it, feels more like a protracted dream, okay, than what we would intuitively define as a reality, because of its lacking permanence, and the duration is just a matter of relativity, really. And it's also fairly clear to see that our understanding of the cosmos and what may constitute absolute reality is not too dissimilar to an ant's understanding of Mars. And to this extent, even if there is an objective reality, our understanding of it being so limited, it may as well be an illusion to us. And that is why our mind is so easily fooled when you think about it, when we are in a dream, because our understanding of reality is so limited anyway, that even when it's shown a dream, it kind of believes it to be real. So with all these things being as they are, I think it's fair to conclude that the world and the existence more closely resembles an illusion or a flimsy concept in your mind than any definitive reality. And that concludes our discussion today. Leave the video a like. Please comment below to let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.